G'day guys, we're just here with an S85 today. I've got Tony with me and we're just going to run through the setup of a high pressure VANOS oil pump system on the S85 V10. Some interesting things are about to be shown here, but first and foremost we just want to show you how to set up the backlash on the gear that's driven off the crank. So there's a smaller gear in there which you can see is meshed to this larger gear on the VANOS pump. And it's critical that this is set up so that the backlash is correct, so it's not too tight or too loose. So we're aiming for about 6 to 8 hundredths of backlash, but we're going to show you something interesting here. Tony, you take over and just show us what we've got here.
Okay, so with the setup where it is now, the pump actually slides in this direction to alter the mesh, and that's how you adjust it to get in that window of 6 to 8 hundredths. So with the engine inverted, okay, upside down, which is not the normal position in the car, this is what we've got with this setting here. So if I move that needle, pretty much I've got about 0.1 of a millimetre, which is 10 hundredths. You can see that clearly when I'm moving the gear backwards and forwards.
So that's on a little finger gauge, isn't it, that toggles differently to a traditional...
on the flank of the tooth, so you're getting a good measurement there. And there is some end float on the pump shaft. As you can see, I can pull it in and out a little bit like that, and that'll change the reading a little bit, right? So, but I'm holding it in one direction axially, and I'm just moving the backlash onto the crank. I'm getting 0.1. So we're a little bit big according to the tolerance recommended by BMW. Don't forget the key thing here is it's inverted upside down, and because we've got an oil clearance on the crankshaft, when it's in this position, the crank's falling away, which is increasing our clearance because this is stationary and the crank's moved in that oil clearance play area.
So we've shot for about 2 thou of clearance there on the main, so you could say...
You're talking imperial, yeah, but...
Sorry, well let's talk hundredths.
Yes,
so,
that's for old guys like me.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's talk in metric. So we're aiming for that 6 to 8 hundredths window, and we've got a little bit more. We've got 10. Now we're going to roll it over and see what effect the crank falling in its bore, if you like,
under its own weight
does to the does to the clearance. So can you get on the dial there? Okay.
Yeah,
now I'm not going to look at it. I'm just going to push it in one direction and rock it.
Yeah, so we're seeing about 6 or 7 hundredths there now.
Right.
So what, 2 or 3 hundredths or 3 or 4 hundredths difference?
Yeah.
Which is just over a thou, if you want to go back to that 2 thou.
Yeah.
So that's like the crank dropping in half of its distance down under its own weight.
That's right. Yeah, because of the oil clearance. That clearance, or the amount that the crank dropped, isn't a direct, there's no direct relationship between the backlash of the gear and that drop. We're only measuring the backlash of the gear, so it's hard to say, what it actually really is changing. But this is, of course, the position in the car. If you're doing this job in the car, you've got the crank sitting down. But wait, there's more.
There's more. Okay.
Now we're in the tolerance range now, 6-7 hundredths of where we should be. And it's a good thing that they've given you that number, because I reckon they're clever and they've worked out the dynamic operation, because what will happen obviously with the crank, once it's spinning and turning, we've got oil pressure in the circuit, we'll get an oil wedge forming and it'll roll around and actually lift the crank.
Right.
Obviously we don't want metal-to-metal contact when the engine's running. Now that, if you look at it, it'll lift it, but it doesn't lift it exactly vertically, it lifts it slightly offset because the wedge will tend to form on the leading edge here. This engine spins like all automotive engines, clockwise from the free end. And so I'll lift it and slightly at an angle like that up. Have a look at where the pump is, where the axle of the pump is. It's in that plane. Which someone's probably maybe thought about it a little bit cleverly and said, okay, well, when it's running...
Maybe these guys here did.
Oh, thanks, funny guys. And so actually during operation, that 6 to 8 hundredths is probably going to be more.
Okay.
But they've probably given that 6 to 8 hundredths as a setting point. That's where it needs to be. When it's in operation, who knows what it'll be. It's hard to measure. Yeah.
Well, we've got a good mesh in there. This has got the Series 2 deeper tooth.
Yeah, this is the late model sprocket set, yep.
Yep. So you can see the engagement there is on the center tooth is quite deep, but enough clearance. There'll be a little bit of heat. We don't know if it'll expand or contract because we've got two different metals.
Yeah.
That's another calculation.
Maybe a small change, would
Yep.
be pretty hard to measure.
Yep.
But yeah. So it's just a thing to think about. If you're doing the engine on the stand and it's inverted, if you set your clearance, on the tight side when it's inverted, you're probably too small when you turn it the right way.
Well, a lot of people are doing rod bearings in these cars on the hoist, as we do in the shop.
That's fine because it's the right orientation. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So a good tip is to get one of these finger dial gauges here, which correctly orientates itself when you're trying to check that clearance.
On the tooth. On the flank,
And if you're doing these in your shops or in your garage at home, definitely consider these measurements we've spoken about and try and get yourself in that happy medium.
Yeah, and I think the story is BMW did make a change with these sprockets. The early ones were the shallower teeth sprockets. We've got one over here actually, and they've changed. And they don't usually change things unless there's a reason. So that's the shallower sprocket depth. It's if you hold it next to the other one, you'll see the difference. Of course, different part numbers. I can't get it close enough to see. Can you get a shot?
It's a bit hard to see. You can actually see it's a little bit deeper on the other one. You can see it's a sharper leading edge, top of the tooth.
Yeah.
That's it, guys. I thought we'd just show you that while we were doing it. Thought it'd be an interesting video for those who are interested in putting these together or doing a rod bearing service where you have to take that pump off. So make sure you consider that. And if you need any help or any questions, just reach out and we'll be happy to. Cheers. Thanks, guys.